Hello and welcome to Deemed Redeemable. I am your co-host, Clevelyn.
And I'm Kenneth Handy.
Together, we're here to share the story of a man who spent years on death row and how his journey led to redemption, faith, and transformation. So today's episode is going to flow a little bit differently. And Ken, I just want you to take us to the day, the moments that led up to you finally getting out of prison, what those emotions were, and what had to happen for you to be set free, and then walk me through that journey, please.
Just trying to figure out where to start. I had come up for parole a number of times, and this time I had actually a lawyer with me that was pleading my case. And it was actually two lawyers, and one of them was my appellate defender that had also helped me to get rid of the death sentence. He had believed early on that I didn't actually get a completely fair trial. And so he worked very cheaply with another lawyer who kind of knew the insides and outsides of the prison system and the legal game, dealing with parole to get me a decent, fair shot in front of the parole board. Of course, what they do is they send a submittal in of why I should get parole. And then if that works out, they'll send me to a state psychiatrist, and he'll give me a test, and then he'll talk to me for an hour or so. And another miracle, it was the very psychiatrist that spoke with me the day I came to prison on death row, and they did the indoctrination, finding out if I was capable of not hurting myself. And it was the very guy that had done that. He had retired and was going on, which was a miracle because when I came into the room, he said, "Do you remember who I am?" And I was like, no, you know. And so he explained that when I came into death row, he had done my initial interview, which was 32 to 33 years prior. Yeah. So I felt like it was a God moment in a way. So after that, my programmer let me know that I was seriously being looked at by the parole commission. I was working in a prison metal factory, uh, making different metal things that you see for the state, whether it would be bear boxes, the little bear trash cans that they lock up, um, different things for national parks and stuff like that. Um, Learning how to work with metal, basically. Anyways. And then one day they told me, they said, "Hey, look here, you got to go see the parole board." And I was like, "For real?" So I was really incredulous because I'd been up for parole a few times and I hadn't gotten any chance at all. I didn't get any interviews. I didn't get to see the psychiatrist. I didn't get no tests. All I got was a letter saying, "Not at this time." And then you'd come up 3 years later. So I was kind of like scared, but excited at the same time because, I'd worked for 33 years to 33 years to get to this point.
Did
Um,
did did this one feel different? Was there something in your heart that was like, this is the one, this is it?
it did because the programmer told me that, he said, "I don't see this done every day. So I think you've got a real shot." So I didn't say anything to any other inmate because unfortunately, some inmates will try to Um,
Mess
End
you
your
up.
progress. Yeah, they will try to mess you up. And I did have two that we're going to try. Uh, Again, a God thing. I got shot out to go see the parole board in the middle of the night, and um, I never came back to that prison camp because I was given what they call a MAP contract. It's a mutual agreement parole program. And what they do is they tell you, okay, we're going to give you such and such a time. You're going to work through the system, and we're going to let you out on such and such a date if you complete all of the things that we ask you to do. And so I was given a 2-year map, and fortunate for me, COVID was a good thing for me because I never even made a full 2 years. When COVID happened, um, I was let out 5 months early than I was supposed to due to COVID.
Wow.
Yeah. And I didn't expect that. So,
Wow. Well, then
yeah,
I have to ask the obvious, right? Which is you went in at a time where cell phones are not a thing, internet was not a thing. A lot of the things that we had during COVID were not a thing, and more importantly, you came out in a pandemic. So what was that shock like to you? What the how difficult was it for you to adjust to this world that you did not leave because this is not the world that you had left when you went in?
I never thought that was going to bother me that much, to be honest, Cleveland. Um, I mean, there was a time when there was no cell phones. So, and now today I was already reading and looking on TV and news programs that 5, 7, 8 year olds were working cell phones like adults could not. And I was thinking, well, I'm not a complete dumb butt. I could probably learn a little bit. If a kid can do it, maybe I can. So I really wasn't afraid of that. I think that what made me scared was actually the authorities. Convicted murderer, and armed robber getting out of prison sets the authorities on alert. It doesn't matter whether it's been 30, 40 years. In the meantime, they want to make sure that this guy's not getting out and being a danger to the public. Can you blame them? No. So I was more concerned about good officers maybe being too extreme and maybe bad authorities, which we all know there's bad authorities, maybe taking advantage of my situation. So um, that was my true concern. As far as we talk about miracles, I'll give you some more. When they let me out, I didn't have a home plan. You have to think, I'm from Las Vegas, but I'm in North Carolina. My biological mother is now living in Texas. So is my brother. So is my nephew and his wife. And all I had was people that I had met here in North Carolina or in the Carolinas. And so they told me if I could come up with a home plan, they would consider letting me go early during the pandemic. What's a guy to do? So I asked a halfway house, a pretty big one, a Christian halfway house at that, in Asheville, if they would take me in. Thought, well, man, sure, I'd be if I could get somebody to sponsor me. So I had two chaplains go to this Christian organization, and they said, oh, no, 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 we won't take him. No. Yeah. And I was like, oh, man. So I was talking to the lady.
Was this just simply well, because like you said, the murder robbers set some alarms off, or like
Yeah,
they were
it's
just like,
that right
"No."
there. Yeah, it's the murder and armed robbery thing. Um, Thankfully, God had a different plan that I didn't know about. See, I thought being in Asheville would have been perfect. There's big recovering community in Asheville. That would have been awesome. You know, God had a different plan. So I mentioned it to the lady who had been raising me emotionally and mentally and spiritually from a child to a man for the last 20 years. And she said, "Oh, you can come live with us." Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And she asked, "How long do you think you're going to stay?" And I said, "Well, thinking I don't want to impose on them a whole lot. So I said 3 to 5 months. Okay. And just long enough to get a job, get on my feet, get an apartment, and have some kind of relationship with the authorities. So the parole board approved it. And 10 days later, they told me, "You better have somebody to pick you up because you're getting out on this date. Here, sign some papers." You
Wow.
know, yeah, it was.
So,
I
what was
remember the
that?
day I got out. Yeah, it
Mm,
was funny. I'm just kind of preempting maybe this question because when
God,
when my spiritual father came to pick me up, Terry, I told him when I got in the car, drive, don't look back, don't stop.
you're like, before they back out, before they
Exactly,
change their
that
mind.
was exactly my thoughts.
And so I wanna know, what was that when you knew you were gonna get out, when you knew, "Tomorrow is the day and I'm getting out,"
I couldn't sleep.
or you couldn't say what was the moment you got to tell people, the your people on the outside, what was that moment on? Like, a call to your biological mom, to your brother, like, what was that like?
Um, it was great. I mean, when I say great, it it's an exhilaration to tell somebody like my biological mother and my brother who, had supported me for so many years to say, "Hey, as long as I keep my nose clean and I do what they tell me to do on these things, then I'm going to get out on this date." And my mom was like, "You sure?" you know, because a lot of times in the prison systems you can be told one thing, but that doesn't always pan out. And my brother, your father-in-law, had already threatened me if I'd have gotten in another fight years before, then he was going to be done with me because he knew I had one shot, and he didn't want me to get in any more trouble and ruin that shot. So I already kind of knew where he was, and since he had a helping hand with the lawyers, I was trying to pay special attention to doing what he would want me to do.
Oh. See, that's something that I didn't know, but
Yeah.
that's who knew? He knows how to set down a boundary.
Oh gosh. There was another miracle that happened with him, um,
Okay,
in this whole scenario. See, when he got the bill for the lawyer, he didn't have that money at the time, and he prayed. Yes, my brother prayed. Okay,
talk
and
about miracles.
oh gosh, he prayed about the money, and the money showed up unexpectedly. Yeah, and he knew that that had to be an answer to that prayer. And I knew because I was like, that shouldn't have happened. And it did. So I felt like the whole scenario was perfect. You just asked about what it was like. I have to say that the miracle in this was God knew that if I had gone to the big city, I would have had a whole lot more problems acclimating to society. But where I went was perfect. I was nothing but around people who believed in me, people who had spirituality, people who belonged to a church that had known about me for years and had been praying for me for over 20 years. And it was a small county, and it just worked out perfectly. I couldn't have asked if it had been up to me, I'd have messed it up, to be honest. Because I
You
thought
got the truth for almost everybody.
yeah, yeah. And then being in the pandemic, it kind of kept me from a lot of situations right at front because you couldn't go a lot of places, which was funny
Yeah, that
because
was ac
the only place I could go with permission from my parole officer was to go over to the border to Tennessee because it was really close. So border counties are a little different in every state. So I could go over to the border to Tennessee. Tennessee was like there was no pandemic. When you went there, nobody had masks on. Everybody I mean, they were like, oh, we ain't worried about that stuff. You went to North Carolina and everybody
Tennessee.
was like masked up and it was something else.
So, that's something that I also wanted to know because essentially you kinda you left prison only to come out during a pandemic where people weren't allowed to go anywhere. So it's
Right.
like yeah, you're out here, but we're not allowed to go places. So how d and, for at least for my husband and I, we were at that time, we were kind of in our own bubble even before the pandemic. Like, we were just kind of like, "Okay, we're going to work, we're coming home, we're playing video games, we're making dinner." We're like we had no kids at that time, so we were just like, you know, we we were going out, but, like, it was just, like, our own bubble. Like, we weren't, like, interacting with friends and things like that a whole lot even before the pandemic. And then, like, during the pandemic, it just kind of felt like, well, we're kinda just continuing our own routine. Like, we're not doing a whole lot, but for us, we had, like, the video games, we had our cell phones, we had, like, we could do all that stuff. What was it like for you? Like, what did you do to not, like, what activities were you doing during the pandemic? Because you just left prison and you're, like, out here, you the freedom to do a lot more than in the inside, but we're also in the middle of a pandemic, so what are you doing?
Well, with the exhilaration of being out, it was really hard for me for almost 6 months. Actually, not even 6 months, about 4 or 5 months that to really take it in. Everything was completely new and fresh to me. So first you've got the phone. That's a mystery within itself for me. And plus I got a tablet, a really cheap tablet. I didn't buy this stuff. My brother did for me. And there's the part of trying to learn to drive a car again. You know, not having had a license for 30 something years was like not ever having a license. It's not that I didn't remember how to drive a car. Heck, inside, I was driving a front end loader at times at the job that I had. So I knew how to drive, but to drive with rules and boundaries, to understand defensive driving, that was a new thing.
Yeah,
Um,
and I mean, I'm assuming obviously the technology even in the vehicles and the vehicle they all changed.
they did.
So I'm assuming that all was like what
Mhm.
now we have all these fancy screens when back then we had I want to say it was CDs, but it might have been cassettes. I have a hard
It
time
was
understanding
CDs.
how
It,
old
it
you
was
are.
the CD era. They were just coming out and stuff like that. But cassettes are what I knew. Cassette tapes. And then there's so many things that come along. First of all, I had to remember because I had spent a number of years working on my recovery inside. When I say working on my recovery, there's a lot of 12-step people out there that will immediately think, oh, he was in prison, so he couldn't. That's not true. Okay. I can promise you that from the day I was arrested until the day that I got clean and sober in 1997, okay, I was always able to get drugs and alcohol. There are very few days that I did not until I got clean because I learned how to. I'm an addict. I'm an alcoholic. If there's a way, I have a will. Okay. So there's the point of trying to work on my recovery being getting out. There's also employment. There's also learning how to deal with I have to get over some hurdles. Again, thankfully, in the county that I was in, I was able to take little steps towards this. My first job was demoing a business that needed. So I got paid cash and having a different work ethic than people on the outside, which I didn't realize. I had built up a work ethic inside that people on the outside didn't always have. I was told by my employer after 3 weeks that I had outworked two other people doing the same job that had taken 2 months. I finished the job and I was getting
Okay.
paid like $9 an hour, but I didn't care because I was in prison making $1 a day at the most.
Yeah, so
So,
that was something that I wanted to bring up, that we've talked about this before, is that a lot of prisoners are used for their labor,
mhm.
and
It's definitely, I don't care what anybody says. You can call it anything you want. It's called indentured servitude. That's what it's called. And you
yeah.
can call it anything else you want, but that's what it is.
Right, and so I feel like, the work ethic, even though it's great, it's working, for you, it worked for you. I I see it as a little bit problematic because it's like, well, you were in the inside, so how much of a choice did you have to not have that work ethic? Because you're inside, and the punishment on the
Mm,
inside.
that's something that I did myself, that I did not
Okay.
just myself, but my faith spurred. I didn't have a work ethic to begin with. It's something that was built up over a lot of time inside because, well, one, I knew that if I was going to get any favor, I was going to have to show that I was worthy of favor inside. And then the other thing is that I always looked at it when I get out, I know getting employment is going to be a problem. So when they hire me, I don't want them to have a thought of saying, "Oh, he's not worth nothing. Like get rid of him." So we were talking about my work ethic and how it was built and how I understood that if I didn't have a work ethic, I might not be able to be employed when I did get out. So I had outworked a couple of guys in my first job, and then I was out of work after 3 weeks. So I'm
Why?
sitting there after 2 days of not working and thinking, I've got to get to work. So I went down to Ingles. I just went down there, filled out an application, gave it to the store manager, and said, "Hey, can I talk to you now about this?" And so he said, "Yeah, sure." So I said, "Look," I said, "when you do my background check, I have some stuff, but it's 30 years old." I said, "But I'll be a good worker for you." He said, "Well, I need somebody in the deli, but it's an assistant manager." And I was like, "Well, does that pay?" He goes, "To be honest, it doesn't pay really well at Ingles." So he gave me like $11 an hour as an assistant manager of the deli. And so I really worked as the regular employees. I mean, because everybody did the same thing. So I worked there for a couple of weeks. And then my pastor told me in passing that he had been at a stone place and said they were looking for people to work. And I felt more comfortable where I could put my hands on something. Serving people, I like serving people, but not food wise. It just, it's just, I'm always worried about doing something bad that could get somebody sick. So I put in for the stone place and they hired me because I came in and I told them, "Hey, I'm the guy that you probably don't want from my background, but if you'll give me a chance, I'll be glad to work for you." So I started working for the stone place and they gave me a pay bump and I worked pretty good. And I worked from installing to where I got into the shop and I was working with my hands really good. And then, as like we say in employment, in that county, that's the miracle because all these places gave me a shot because I was in a small county and I was willing to show them a good work ethic. Of course, I went from there from 1250 to 1850 to being a maintenance tech in houses and working in electrical on some houses and then I was going from the residential part and then I got down to Charlotte and it was a whole different game. Now people really cared about my past. So in that process of these last 4 years, um, I've been through lots of jobs, worked a lot in electrical, the residential, a little bit, a lot of commercial, and about a year of industrial. But in the meantime, I've been fired from 2 jobs for my past. Both jobs, letter of recommendation.
So I want to take a minute to take a pause here and
Okay.
to talk a little bit about how you met your wife, if in anything you're comfortable sharing
Oh, sure.
about about how you met your wife, how you guys went from meeting to getting married, and then I want to go back to the job.
It's JR's fault.
Of course, everything's always his fault.
When I got out, of course, being without physical intimacy for 30 something years, it was something that a lot of people thought that would be an experience I need to have, especially my brother. So
Of course. Of course Junior would think that.
we argued over that because now I had worked to install different character traits within myself. There was a time that I was a dog before I went to prison, where all it was, I mean, I was 19. What do you think I had? I had no experience with relationships because my relationships were physical intimacy and then the next person, you know? So
I was gonna say something, but I think I'm gonna
so that's why I say I was a dog. Um I did have a relationship before prison, but I was completely screwed that up because I was a drunk, as well as being 19, being a drunk, and not being able to keep a job real good, or not going to school real well when I should have. I messed everything up before I went to prison. So just so you know.
Hmm.
So I met my wife, Rebecca, because my brother said I needed to get on one of these dating apps. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to get on that. I don't want to just uh, hit it and quit it is one of the terms that, I mean, I'm just telling you what. So I told him I was
I'm
really,
sure many people can relate.
yeah, I told him that I was really wanting a relationship because for 33 years, I had dreamed about what it would be like to have a true partner, to have somebody who could understand that I'm recovering and that I want to have this relationship, this close, intimate relationship. Yes, I wanted sex, but that has to be a result of a different kind of relationship. I didn't really think that it was that hard because you read about relationships, right? You hear radio programs. I listen to a lot of Christian radio programs about how to have relationships. Totally different than actually having a relationship.
Right, and this is the part where I'm talking about, like you went in and the world was one, and you came out and the world was another. And it's like that kinda like shock that I was kind of asking about, which was dating websites and how things have kinda changed, and I was just,
I'm not
you know
sure that the world has ever been really different. Okay. You have to understand that I know enough history to know that you used to be able to go to temples and have sex with prostitutes whenever you wanted to in Roman culture. So I'm like, well, wait a minute. How did we get all this? So America has a different history to it. Yet, where we're at in our history, I do recognize that there are some things. It's like women should have rights. They should be treated well. They should be treated with respect. Men really should take a better responsible role in that part of relationships. But
you
I
said it.
know that I wanted a partner. You know, I don't want somebody that's subservient to me. I don't want somebody nagging me either to death when I just want to be me. I want to be accepted. That's the part of partnership that I wanted. So, in the argument with JR, he said, well, why don't you try one of these Christian apps? And I said, okay, are you paying for it? So he said he would pay for a limited amount of time. So, of course, I got on one of these. Uh, I think it was one of the most popular Christian apps. I'll say it that way. That way, I'm not promoting somebody um, out of the way here, unless they want me to. Hey, um, so I
Quick little
started
shout
reading.
out.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying like a quick little shout out. Well,
Yeah, we'll shout out. You give us the right impetus. Um, I started reading the bios of these women, and all of them seem wonderful. When you write your bio, they're all, oh, I'm looking for yada yada yada, and you start thinking about that song. If you like pina coladas, right? So I was talking about how Rebecca. I was reading her bio on this Christian dating app, and I had messaged a few girls, but when I read her bio, it read almost word for word like the 12-step programs book that I study. And so when I messaged her, I said, "Are you a part of this fellowship?" And she messaged me back, "How did you know?" It's like, well, so I started telling her about what she had written. And so she took it to her mentor, and her mentor said, "Yeah, you probably put in a lot of these words." So that started our conversation. And the conversation went well. And after 3 days, um, she finally seen my full name. And I told her that when she did, I just told her the truth about who I was and what she was going to find if she looked me up. And I was hanging up the phone and told her, "Look, I guess if you call me back, that'd be awesome. And if you don't, I'll understand." So a little while later, she called me back and said, "I remember the words exactly. I'm not scared." And so that started a long distance relationship that went on for about a month, and at the behest of the lady who is my spiritual mother. I cut it off with Rebecca because I needed to get some priorities straight. When I say cut it off, we were only talking online and on the phone. And that I didn't know it at the time. Remember, I know nothing about relationships and women. So I had really put Rebecca out because I think she was starting to like me. And we did message a little through Facebook, but it was just like you would somebody you kind of know on Facebook, likes and stuff like that. And then one day, she had a problem, and I felt I read about the problem, and I was so concerned, and I thought, I need to talk to this girl. So we started again, but I did not tell my spiritual mom. I did not. Finally, it was October, and I had a friend at church who was about to be married. And I asked Rebecca if she wanted to come up to the mountains and be my plus one. So we'd never met in person before. So she came up to the mountains, and I took her to the wedding and surprised my mama. Oh, yes. Of course, I know nothing about women.
listen, sitting here listening to this and like, do you remember the time when our parents used to tell us, "Don't meet strangers, don't meet strangers off the internet. Don't talk to people off
That's
the internet."
what
And
my
now
mama
our
was
whole world
thinking.
revolves around this.
So it's kind of funny because, like, uh, I'm sure both sides were like, I don't know who this girl is or woman is. She doesn't really know, but we had a feel for each other. And so, um, she stayed up in the mountains for the weekend, and on Sunday morning she went to church with me because she wanted to see this place that all I did was you know I I said this is the best church ever. So she went. Well, she held my hand in church, and Mama seen it. So Sunday night, Mama called and had a talk with me,
Mm, I bet she
and
did.
she told me, "You look invested." And I said, "Yeah, I think I am a little bit." And she said, "Well, you better make a decision on how invested you are. And if you're invested, then do something about it." Little did she know that I would take that to mean that I needed to make a commitment to Becca. So that Saturday, I bought a ring and I asked her to marry me the next Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah. Surprise Becca, too. We met in a town halfway between where she was living here in South Carolina and where I was living in North Carolina. First, we met in a town and we had brunch. And, and when we went to brunch, I had already bought the ring and I snuck it in. I'm trying not because you can see a ring thing in your pockets or whatever. And so I'm trying to make sure she doesn't see it. And I place it in front of her at the table at lunch and she picks it up and she looks at it and she holds it up and she says, "What's this?" And it drops into her soup. I was like, "Oh gosh, this is not good." I tell the story normally that she threw it in the soup.
She
So
was like, "Oh God."
yeah. And I said, "Look, I'm serious. I don't need a lot of time, but I need to make a commitment if we're going to do this. And if we're not, take that ring, throw it in the river somewhere, and let's just end this thing now." And she said, "I haven't said no." So we continued with a relationship that was long distance. She came up to the mountains a lot. We were engaged. And then 3 months later, we got married. And guess who my witnesses were?
Tell me.
My spiritual mama and daddy, and she came to love Rebecca like Becca's her own daughter, you know, because she loves me. And she realized that Becca wasn't a threat to me. So that's our story, and we're sticking to it.
Okay, so now, because we've talked about this in other episodes, but now we got to get to the very details, right? We talk about
Okay.
highs and lows and whatnot. So we got to talk about, you mentioned just a little bit ago that some of these jobs they would find out about your past and they would let you go. They would say no. So I want to know how how was that experience of like having to come home or give her a call and say, "Hey, this job, they don't want me there anymore."
It's hard. I mean, it's hard to tell somebody that kind of relies on you that, you don't have a job. You got bills to pay. But I never let that bother me because I've learned. We did the first episode on honesty because I realized that the door to everything in life has to start with not just an honest admission, but an honest evaluation of what's really going on. Um, and she knew too, because both jobs that I got fired from, well, that's not true. There was one job I was fired from that was only partly because of my past. And that was because corporate, which was a huge company, it's all over the world, didn't know about it. It came to light. And then after I spoke with the head of HR for a couple of hours, actually on the phone, he was in Chicago. He felt like I deserved a chance, but in order for the din that had been raised about my past to die down. He needed for me to step away for 6 months. And then he said I could come back and we would do this a different way. But the other two jobs that I had lost, uh, I got letters of recommendation with. So I worked for a treatment center. I told them from the very first interview, within 2 minutes of the interview, about my past. The lady who hired me knew
What a way to start an interview.
exact. But I felt like coming into a treatment center with my past and saying, hey, I'm recovered to the point where you can see this. See, I didn't really want to continue in the construction field to begin with. I wanted to get out because I'm older. I know the honest admission and evaluation that I've only got so long to work, and trying to work in the construction field is eventually it's going to end. The body does give out, and I know how hard it is. So I wanted to get into something where I could help people and make a difference. That's my heart. I've been helped because other people did that. So I wanted to do that. You understand? Um, After a few months, one of the clients made a big deal about me working there. And just let's keep it real because I really don't care what they think about it. But he owed a whole lot of money to the treatment center. His insurance did, and so he raised a lot of bells about me as a defense to that why this treatment center wasn't that good. HR had to take action because now they're struggling with insurance and other stuff, and just told me, hey, we can't keep you working here because of that. So do I think the treatment center was wrong? Yeah. Do I think that they could have done something else? Yes. Do I think other people were wrong? Yeah. But you know what? That's life. I worked for another place. I worked for a month in shipping and receiving, working salary, did a good job. And then they got my whole history back. Just so happened that the owner of the company, as much as he liked me, he had problems with a person who had been convicted of my crimes working there because he had a sister who had been murdered. So it really bothered him. But he also offered me the letter of recommendation. Me, I'm like, if you're going to give me a letter of recommendation, you should keep me working for you. But I also understand emotions.
Yeah. Yeah.
What ended up happening was that I finally said, you know what? I'm going back into construction. I had an offer on the table from a big commercial company. And so I went back to work for them. And well, as you know, I worked for um, the company that I worked for, and I've worked on government funded AI projects. I've worked on airports. I've worked in all kinds of sensitive places, no problems, and I have actually I don't want to, and I try not to work lead because it puts responsibility on me that I don't want for various reasons.
All right. So, with all of that, how did you manage to buy your very first home?
Oh my gosh.
Because I'll say this, for us, it was not easy, right? And for us, it was a financial factor, but it's just because we were financially illiterate for a really long time. And I can't imagine how hard it must have been for you.
Even my first pastor, who's also one of my best friends in the world, Ryan, asked me the same thing. He said, how did you get any credit? Because when I came out of prison, I had what they call ghost credit, right? I had no credit because I wasn't in the system. I bought my first house, uh, 10 months. No, 11 and a half months after I got out of prison.
Wow.
Yeah, God. So
I'm gonna
somebody in
need
the
you to say that
system is gonna
again.
get
Look,
so mad at this, but this is what happened. My
I'm
brother
hold on, hold on.
Okay,
I'm gonna need you to look straight in the camera
alright.
and say that again because somebody out there needs to hear that, to really hear that.
What specific thing?
11 and a half months after I bought
11
my
and a
house.
half months after I got out of prison, I signed the legal paperwork, closed on a house in Avery County, North Carolina, and I'm now in my second house. Um, Not that I still own the first, but it really wasn't me. We talk about all these little miracles that have brought me to the place that I'm at now. Um, this is one of them. Um, so I had no credit. So of course you have to have credit in this world to do anything, to buy a car. I had bought a little Subaru, a 2006 Subaru with 180,000 miles. We paid cash for that. So I didn't have any credit. My brother put me as somebody who was a user of his credit card. So I'm on so that I could start building it. Every place I tried to get a credit card from, there's like, oh no. And the banks, they're going to tell you, hey, you can go a secured credit card. You just give us $200-300 and this will build your credit. Well, I'm sorry. I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to pay you to use my own money. I'm just not going to do it. It is the
See, when I
most
said financially
ludicrous
illiterate,
thing that I've ever heard in my life that you're
yeah,
gonna
I
tell
remember.
me to pay you to use my money. Your money. No, N-O. It's a complete sentence. Okay.
Yeah.
So it was funny because I applied for a smaller department store credit card.
Mhm.
In one of the questions, it asked me, are you associated with this address? That's the exact question. Well, the address was my brother's address. So I said, yes.
Uh-huh.
The next week, I had the same credit score as my brother.
Nice.
Uh, it didn't end there. Now, it just so happened that my brother was trying to refinance his house at that time. So I told him, and you know this because you know this. He told me, he said, don't you do a thing. Don't you buy nothing. Don't you do nothing. He said, I don't need anything changing what I'm trying to do right now. I was like, okay. Um, so I didn't. But after a while, I started doing little things and getting credit. I started getting phone. And then when I turned on my electric for my first apartment, um, they checked my credit score. And then we noticed that my brother's credit score and mine were not identical anymore. They were off like 10 points. And so I felt like, well, I could try it. I was working for a reputable company. And when the lender in that county seen that I worked for that company and I had a, a series of paychecks that said I'd been there for a few months, and I made plenty of money to make the mortgage. My credit score was good, even though my payment history was not long. They granted me the mortgage, and it was on. I sold that house 11 months later because we came down to Charlotte. Um, we needed to come down to Charlotte because, first of all, because of the pandemic, most people don't know this, but smaller areas, 12-step meetings were almost non-existent. If you didn't do it on Zoom, you weren't doing it in person. Even down here in this big major metropolis area, there were so many restrictions on what you could do. So I would go to places to go to a 12-step meeting, and they might not even have it, even though it was advertised, because everybody's afraid to show up, and then when
So
you have it,
how
right.
Sorry. How did that affect your recovery? Because we talk about technology and all that, but obviously you just got out. You said if I had gone to the big city, that would have been a completely different thing. But I didn't even think about this aspect of you needing to go to your meetings, and then all of a sudden maybe having to do them via Zoom, which I can only imagine is not at all the same.
It's not. You can get the same thing, but there's just this it's almost like wearing a mask in a way to me. You can mask who you are easier, but when you go to a 12-step meeting for me and I look you in the eye and I shake your hand, there's just a knowing. I know when someone's genuine, and it's easier for me to either be genuine or it's not so easy for me not to be genuine. Do you understand what I'm saying? And it's not
Yeah.
like when you come to a 12-step meeting, we care because obviously we're all drunks or addicts or whatever you may have. But the thing is that when you come to a meeting, generally you speak a different language than normies do. And by normies, I mean people who don't have issues with addiction or alcoholism. To just patch this up. Not only did I need meetings, but I also knew that my wife needed to be closer to her daughters at that time. And all three of her daughters, who are my stepdaughters, who I care about very much, even though we don't always get along, um, they just needed their mother. And their mother, without admitting it, needed to be needed.
Oh. Oh, you know what? I really appreciate you sharing all that with me because even though we've touched on the subjects a little bit, and not only in past episodes, but in conversations and when you lived with us, I definitely feel like in this episode I got to know you a little bit more. And I hope that the people listening can connect with you and that they'll want to learn more about you because I know I do. I want
Awesome.
to get to know you even more. And so I think that concludes this episode. Thank you for listening to Deemed Redeemable. Join us next time as we continue exploring stories of redemption, faith, and transformation. I'm Clevelyn.
And I'm Kenneth.
Until then, remember every journey matters, and if you're breathing, you too are deemed redeemable.